Hello everyone, peace be upon you. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and stay with me until the end of the story. Also, leave a comment telling me which city and country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story has reached. For those of you who have already subscribed, I sincerely wish you good health, ease in all your affairs, abundant blessings, and may all your hopes and dreams come true. Amen. Now, let's begin the story. The sun sat low over the New Mexico desert as a black SUV rolled toward the main checkpoint gate of Fort Redstone. Dust kicked up around the tires, the metal fencing rattled in the wind, and two young guards straightened when the vehicle stopped. Ethan stepped forward, one hand hovering near his radio. Noah took a half step behind, eyes on the driver's window. The door opened with a clean click. A woman in plain clothes stepped out, calm and steady. She didn't rush, didn't posture. She just stood with the kind of presence that quieted people without saying a word. "Ma'am, authorization," Ethan said, keeping his tone professional. The woman opened a leather folder and held it out. He skimmed, stopped at the name, then looked up. Colonel Rebecca Alden. He didn't say anything else for a second because it didn't match what he expected to see in front of him. Noah felt the pause and cleared his throat. "You claiming command, ma'am?" "I'm here to assume command of this installation," she said, voice even. "Verify it." Ethan keyed his radio, sent the name up the chain, and waited. The heat pressed down and the wind carried the smell of dust and fuel. Alden scanned the gate, the towers, the distant barracks. She noticed details most people ignore: a loose bolt on a hinge, faded lane paint, a guard shack window that stuck halfway. Nothing dramatic, just small things that add up. A lieutenant jogged over from the interior road with a clipboard tucked under his arm. "Read." He recognized her the second he saw the ID. "Ma'am, Colonel Alden, welcome. Sorry for the holdup." "You did your job," she said. "Keep doing it." Reed nodded to the guards, and the barrier lifted. Alden walked past the line, boots crunching on gravel, and the two privates tracked her with a new mix of embarrassment and respect. "That's her," Noah muttered. Ethan just nodded. Inside the base, the picture sharpened. Barracks Alpha showed peeling paint at the steps. A Humvee near the motor pool sat on low air and a fuel log clipped to its window had 2 blank days. The parade ground stripes were faded. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to tell a story. Reed fell in step. "We've kept things moving, ma'am," he said carefully. "You'll see room for improvement." "I already do," Alden said. "What time is the staff meeting?" 10 minutes at command headquarters." He opened the door to a fluorescent-lit conference room. Officers stood around a scarred table, conversations dropping off as she entered. Major Cross leaned back in a chair, arms folded, watching her in a way that said he had seen plenty and wasn't easily impressed. Alden set the orders on the table. "I'm Colonel Rebecca Alden. Effective today, I assume command of Fort Redstone. We will reset standards. Training, maintenance, accountability. If the process is sloppy, the outcome is risky. We're not doing sloppy." The room stayed quiet. Cross finally spoke. "With respect, Colonel, the base runs. Maybe not flashy, but it runs." "Running and ready aren't the same," she said. "We'll be ready." She left the room with Reed for a walkthrough. Training field echo buzzed with light drills. Target silhouettes were sun-faded. Rifle racks were organized, but one lock hung loose. She didn't bark. She noted. She asked a sergeant 3 clean questions and got 2 clean answers and 1 shrug. That told her enough. In the mess, a full tray return station sat half-used. In the clinic doorway, Jenkins met her with a straight look. "Supplies are fine today," the captain said. "Scheduling could be tighter." "Good. Bring me a list." Back at the gate, Ethan and Noah swapped places and reset their checks. Alden stopped on the sidewalk, glanced back at them, and gave a small nod. She didn't owe them a speech. They didn't need one. They had just learned something that would move through the ranks faster than any memo. By late afternoon, the desert light turned gold and long shadows fell across the parade ground. Alden stood at the edge and watched a squad execute a simple formation. The cadence was close, not crisp. She could work with close. She had before. She knew the base didn't need a hero. It needed standards, repetition, and leaders who showed up where the work was. Reed came up beside her. "First impressions, ma'am." "Fixable," she said. "We start in the morning. Inspections, then drills. Cross won't like the pace." "He doesn't have to like it," she said. "He has to lead it." Reed exhaled, more relieved than he wanted to show. The wind picked up and carried the sound of boots, radios, and distant engines. Fort Redstone wasn't broken. It was waiting. Alden watched one more run, checked her watch, and turned toward headquarters. Tomorrow, everyone would see what she expected. Tonight, they could feel it coming, and by morning everyone saw exactly what Alden meant. Reveille cut through the cool air, and within minutes she was at the parade ground with a clipboard and a quiet stare that made people stand a little straighter. Reed moved beside her, calling units by schedule. Cross arrived late by 2 minutes and didn't offer an excuse. Alden didn't mention it, she just wrote the time and kept going. First stop was Barracks Alpha. She ran a finger along a window frame, showed the dust on her glove to the squad leader, and asked simple questions. "Where's your weekly checklist? Who signs the inspection? Why is this bunk tag missing?" She didn't raise her voice. She made it clear these weren't suggestions. When answers turned soft, she cut them to one sentence: "Fix it now." They pushed to the motor pool. A Humvee with low air yesterday still sat on low air today. A maintenance log showed a signature but no torque value. Alden pointed to it. "If it isn't written, it didn't happen." Reed called over the sergeant responsible, and the man tried to explain supply delays. Alden looked at the tires, then at the sergeant. "Get the gauge. Set the pressure. Show Reed the log when it's done." 5 minutes. The sergeant jogged off. Cross watched, arms folded. He finally spoke. "Colonel, we can't run at this tempo every day without burning people out." Alden didn't look at him. "We can't run at any tempo if we skip basics. That's how people get hurt." Training field echo came next. Targets were swapped for fresh ones, but 2 were still taped crooked. She walked the line and stopped behind a private whose stance was off. She adjusted his foot with a tap, corrected his grip, and had him fire again. "Tighten your group and breathe on the pause," she said. The shot tightened. He nodded, surprised at himself. Alden moved on without comment. Word traveled faster than the wind, the new CO corrected form in person. No yelling, no drama, just precision. At command headquarters, she called a mid-morning huddle. Officers ringed the table, Jenkins slipping in with a clipboard from the clinic. Alden laid out her plan like a range card. Daily inspections for 2 weeks. Maintenance logs audited. Ammo accounting reset to 0 with dual signatures. Drill cadence increased, no shortcuts, no dead time. Cross leaned forward. "Morale will tank. You'll have grumbling in every corridor." She met his eyes. "Morale follows competence. We build competence first." Reed, schedule postings by 1300. Jenkins, I want a med-evac rehearsal on Friday with transport timing down to the minute. Jenkins said, "Roger that." Back outside, Alden stopped by the main checkpoint gate. Ethan and Noah were on, sharper than yesterday, uniforms squared away, radios tight to their shoulders. She pointed at a hinge bolt they had already replaced and gave a short nod. "Good." Noah exhaled like he had been holding his breath since sunrise. Ethan just said, "Copy, ma'am," and reset his scan. Small wins stacked up across the base, a restriped lane on the parade ground, a secured rifle lock, a corrected inventory sheet. Small losses showed too. A fuel cabinet with a latch that stuck. A comms battery left charging with a frayed cord. Alden logged them and sent them to the right NCOs. Fix. Verify. Report back. By noon the desert heat pressed down. Cross found her at the motor pool and walked with her along a line of vehicles. He kept his voice low. "People are tired. You're pushing hard." She didn't slow. "I'm pushing at the speed of standards. You can either carry it with me or pull against it." He looked out at the line and didn't answer. Reed joined with a copy of the training matrix, already reworked. He and Alden trimmed idle gaps, tightened transitions between stations, and set accountability points. It wasn't flashy. It was clean. At 1,500 Alden gathered platoons in the gym. The floor smelled like rubber and sweat, and the PA made her voice flat but even. "We are resetting this base. Not to punish you. To protect you. Accuracy, maintenance, accountability. You will hear these 3 words until you are sick of them. Then you will live them. If you don't know a step, ask. If you see a gap, close it. If you cut a corner, expect to redo the entire task. I will be everywhere until this is normal." Some arms folded. Some jaws tightened. A few heads nodded like they had been waiting for permission to care again. After dismissal, she walked the grounds alone. Sunlight dropped behind the red hills and threw long shadows over the gravel. She heard a squad re-racking plates in the gym without being told. She watched Reed show a corporal how to log a torque value without guesswork. She noticed Jenkins coaching a medic on securing a gurney strap with a single, clean pull. Cross stood near the flagpole, hands on his hips, watching men police the parade ground without grumbling. He came over, slower this time. "You're not easing off, are you?" he said. "No," Alden said. "Not until the basics are muscle memory." He looked like he might argue again, then let it go. "Tomorrow's schedule?" he asked. "Earlier," she said. "We start with vehicles before sunup and hit the range while it's cool." Cross nodded once, almost a salute without the hand. As the last buses idled by the barracks, Alden stopped at the edge of the lot and looked back at Fort Redstone. It didn't look different yet. Not to a stranger. But she could feel the shift under the noise, less drift, more intent. People were standing taller, checking each other, fixing small things before they became big ones. She had seen this arc before. The first day hurts. The second day catches rhythm. The third day shows who means it. The wind picked up, dragging the smell of dust and hot metal across the yard. Reed called from the steps with tomorrow's lineup in his hand. Alden checked the times, handed it back, and headed toward headquarters. The work had started, and the resistance had started with it. That was fine. Conflict meant people cared enough to push back. She would outlast it, one checklist and one clean rep at a time, until the base stopped waiting and finally moved, pushback moved with it. By midweek the grumbling turned into small tests, a skipped signature here, a half-done rack there, a rumor that the pace would taper if they just outlasted the new schedule. Alden read it all without a single raised voice. She tightened the plan instead. Range blocks started 10 minutes earlier. Vehicle checks stacked by team leaders with cross-checks by peers. Reed posted a live board outside headquarters showing every unit's status in green, yellow, or red. Nobody liked seeing their line in red on a public wall. That was the point. Cross walked in while she reviewed the board and tapped a red line with 2 fingers. "That platoon's been stretched for days," he said. "You stack any more on them, you'll get mistakes." "They already made them," Alden said. "We fixed the pattern, not the symptoms." Cross held her look for a beat, then nodded once and left to drive the corrections himself. He wasn't done resisting, but he wasn't standing off either. At main checkpoint gate, Ethan caught a delivery truck with a mismatched manifest. Noah held the driver while Ethan verified the pallet counts by hand. It took extra time in the heat and put a stumble in the morning rhythm, but the numbers were wrong and they stopped it before it spread to 3 different shops. Reed heard the call on the net and showed up with cold water and a straight thanks. Word traveled again, if you do the slow right thing, somebody notices. Training field echo ran hotter that afternoon. Targets were crisp, lanes raked, rifles inspected by serial. Alden moved down the line like a metronome. She corrected stance, trigger press, and breathing with quick, exact cues. A corporal rolled his eyes when she reset his team's cadence for the 3rd time. She didn't take the bait. Again, she said. This time they hit timing. The corporal said nothing, but he didn't roll his eyes on the next rep. Jenkins briefed her on a gap that bothered her. Med-evac drill timing looked good on paper, but litter carries dragged in the turn from gravel to the clinic ramp. Gurney wheels caught the lip. It cost 30 seconds. Alden walked it with her. They tried the turn 3 ways and shaved 20 seconds by moving cones and posting 1 extra spotter. Not dramatic. Useful. Jenkins scratched the change onto her clipboard like it was a small victory. It was. The motor pool became the day's hardest knot. A parts shipment slipped, and a row of Humvees sat waiting on air filters that should have been installed yesterday. The shop chief blamed supply. Alden stared at the whiteboard and then at the shelf with 3 unopened filter kits misfiled under a different NSN. She didn't lecture. She pulled one and handed it to the chief. Install 2 now, show me the log, then fix your bin labels. He flushed, nodded, and started moving. Cross saw the exchange and grunted. You go looking for excuses, you'll find plenty, he said to the chief. Go looking for the work, you'll find that too. Near evening, the first real choice landed. Reed brought in an anonymous note slipped under his door claiming a squad leader was coaching his team to pencil whip checks after hours to look green on the board. If true, it cut at everything Alden was building. If false, it could wreck a leader's name. She read it twice, set it down, and said, we verify. No speeches, no witch hunt. Quiet spot check, randomize the time, compare logs to physical state, talk to 2 soldiers separately. Reed set it up for 2,100. Before the check, Alden walked the barracks in silence. Barracks Alpha smelled like soap and warm dust. Boots lined up cleaner than Monday. Bunk corners were tight. A single towel was hung sloppy. She fixed it herself and kept going. She passed Cross on the stairs, and he stopped her with a low voice. There's a line between pressure and pride, he said. I was waiting to see which one you'd push. Looks like pride. Keep it there. She didn't smile. That's the plan. At 20:58 she and Reed stepped into the squad bay named in the note. No heads up, no extra time to tidy. She asked for 3 items at random, a torque log on a specific axle job, an armory spare parts sheet for springs, and the battery checklist on 3 radios. They pulled the drawers and lockers. The axle job existed, but the torque values were copied from a template, the numbers matched a previous day down to the decimal. The parts sheet had a gap where 2 springs should have been listed used but still showed as available. The radio list had initials from a soldier who was on sick call that day. Alden didn't raise her voice. She asked the squad leader to line up his team and explain how the numbers got like that. He started with, "Ma'am, we were behind," and she lifted a hand. "Stop. We don't make numbers the goal. We make the work the goal. Then the numbers reflect the truth." She turned to Reed. "Pull the items. We start over tomorrow. Squad leader, you'll walk your soldiers through the real checks, and you'll log each step with Reed watching. You'll also write me a 1-page plan for how you keep this from happening again." Due at 0700. The squad leader swallowed and nodded. Nobody argued. They were tired of shortcuts too. They just needed it said, and they needed to see that the sky didn't fall when the truth was read. Outside, night dropped fast over the desert. The wind was cooler, the bass quieter, but not asleep. From the gym came the sound of plates and faint music. From the motor pool came a ratchet's click. From the clinic, Jenkins' voice coaching a medic on a one-handed tourniquet. Ethan and Noah rotated off gate and passed the next team with a short exchange. Alden stood at the edge of the lot and looked back at the board glowing in the corridor window. There was more red than she wanted and more green than yesterday. Cross stopped beside her and said, "You could have smoked that squad." She shook her head. Smoke rises and disappears. Standards stay. He exhaled once, like he'd been holding it for 3 days. "Tomorrow," he said, "I'll run the first block on the range. You can watch me grind it like you want it." "Good," she said. "Bring coffee." He snorted. "Deal." She headed toward headquarters with Reed. He said, "We're turning the corner." "Not yet," Alden said. "Corners hide what's next." He made a face. "You always talk like that." "Only when it's true," she said. They reached the steps, and she paused. The base had moved today. Not all at once. Not loudly. In little choices that stacked into something visible if you knew where to look. Tomorrow would bring harder choices, and maybe a break in the tempo she didn't choose. But tonight the line held. The numbers were honest. The standard was clear. And people who wanted to do it right could finally feel like they weren't doing it alone. By dawn it felt like the whole base was pulling the rope the same direction, and then the rope snapped. The radio cracked with a strangled call from Route 16, convoy incident, 2 vehicles disabled, possible fuel leak, 3 injured, location grid to follow. Reed was already moving when Alden said, "We roll." Cross grabbed a vest without a word and Jenkins came out of the clinic with a jump bag in each hand. Sirens didn't wail, they didn't need them. The desert carried urgency on its own. The scene hit hard. A transport had fishtailed on washboard gravel and clipped a Humvee. One HMMWV sat canted with a front wheel at an ugly angle, the transport's rear door buckled in. Dust hung like fog. The smell of hot metal and fuel wrapped everything. Alden didn't shout. She split the work in a single breath. Jenkins, triage. Reed, cordon and traffic. Cross, kill the ignition, battery leads, fire watch. I want a medic on every litter and an extinguisher at 10 feet. Ethan and Noah had been on gate 2 minutes ago, now they were shoulder to shoulder with flares and cones, pushing a slow crescent of safety onto the road. "You're good, ma'am," Noah called, voice tight. "We've got you a lane." Jenkins knelt beside the first casualty, a sergeant who had banged his head and was trying to sit up. "Stay with me," she said, hands already checking pupils, vitals, blood. Reed moved a private with a shoulder wound to shade, logged times with a Sharpie on tape stuck to the man's sleeve, and read back what he wrote. Alden scanned everything that could kill fast, the silver gleam of a leaking line under the transport, the lazy drift of a cigarette but near a boot print, the possibility of a spark. Cross yanked the battery leads, snapped at a soldier about the butt, and planted 2 extinguishers like guard dogs. When the dust settled enough to talk about cause, the whispers started. Someone said the transport had been rushed out with a skipped final, someone else said the driver took the corner too hot. Alden shut it down with a palm. Facts first, blame never. We secure, stabilize, recover, then we investigate. Jenkins' voice cut through with numbers. 1 concussion watch, 1 possible fractured clavicle, 1 laceration needing sutures. No chest compromise, no abdominal tenderness, no spinal deficits. We move now. Reed, you're on litter 3. Cross, you've got the transport hookup. Ethan, Noah, keep the lane clean. The medevac drill they'd rehearsed yesterday without drama paid the rent today. The turn at the clinic ramp that had stolen 30 seconds last time now cost 5. The spotter was there, the cone was moved, the gurney wheels didn't catch. Jenkins slid the concussion watch onto the bed and barked labs like a short grocery list. Inside 30 minutes the injured were monitored, logged, and stable. Outside, Alden turned back to the road. The transport looked worse than it was. The Humvee looked better than it felt. Cross ran a gloved hand along the bent control arm and whistled low. "We'll cannibalize if we have to," he said. "Not today," Alden answered. "We fix what we own." She walked the paper trail on the hood of a pickup, dispatch sheet, pre-trip, sign-offs. A line item showed a completed inspection with a signature that looked clean, too clean. Reed found the matching log in the motor pool office and stacked it beside the sheet. The numbers didn't lie, the time stamps did. Alden didn't go hunting for a villain. She went hunting for the break in the system. Who saw the vehicle last? What checklist got rushed? Where the torque on a tie rod never made it from a wrench to a pen. Word spread across Fort Redstone that the CO was on the road and not breathing fire. Jenkins spread a different word, the med team worked the plan and the plan held. Cross spread his own, we own the fix. By mid-afternoon, tow lines were set, traffic rerouted, and the after-action brief kicked off in the gym with the same rubber smell but a different kind of silence. Everyone expected the hammer. Alden didn't bring one. This was preventable, she said, voice even. Not because of one person. Because a chain went soft in 3 places: equipment, documentation, judgment. We'll name them, fix them, and keep them fixed. We won't hide the red, and we won't punish the truth. She broke it down like a range lesson. The transport's rear shocks were borderline, caught now, replaced tonight. The final sign-off used a template, effective immediately, no templates allowed. The driver took the corner too fast for the gravel, effective immediately, speed is part of the checklist, and supervisor spot-checked the first mile of every run this week. Cross added the mechanical work assignments. Reed added verification steps with dual signatures that meant something because they'd be compared to reality. Jenkins added a fatigue check for drivers on long shifts. None of it was dramatic. All of it would stick. When she dismissed the formation, nobody moved. A private finally lifted a hand. "Ma'am, are we in trouble?" Alden shook her head. "We're in work. Trouble is when you don't know and don't care. We know, and we care. That's the difference." As the sun slid behind the red hills, the base took a breath and got back to motion. The motor pool lights came on early. The clinic stayed steady and calm. The gate crews rotated without a crack. In headquarters, the status board told the truth in hard colors: red where it needed to be, yellow where caution lived, green where good work had finally become normal. Cross came in with grease on his sleeve and dropped a rag on the table. "I've seen commanders weaponize a mistake," he said. "You didn't. You built a bridge over it." Alden looked at the board. "Bridges carry weight," she said. "We'll load it tomorrow." Before she left, she walked past Barracks Alpha and saw 2 soldiers recalibrating a torque wrench under a stairwell light because nobody wanted to get beat by a decimal again. She cut across to the gym and watched a squad work litter carries until the turn felt automatic. She stepped onto the parade ground and let the night wind cool the day off her face. The base had taken a hit and didn't fold. It had taken instructions and turned them into muscle memory. She thought about the first morning at the gate, about Ethan's hand hovering over the radio, about Noah's quick glance. She thought about Reed's quiet competence, Jenkins' clipped confidence, Cross's grudging then open help. They weren't doing it alone, and now they knew it. The climax wasn't the crash. The climax was the choice that followed: hide or learn. Fort Redstone chose to learn. And with that choice made, the path forward, hard, honest, and steady, was finally clear, and the very next morning they started walking it. Reed posted a fresh status board at headquarters with fewer reds and more yellows than the day before. Cross met Alden at the motor pool before sunrise with a short list: parts replaced, logs corrected, torque values verified by second check. He didn't pitch it like a favor. He presented it like a baseline. Jenkins emailed a concise med recap to every platoon leader: what worked, what lagged, what was fixed overnight. It wasn't glossy. It was practical, and people read it because they'd seen the stakes. Alden opened the day the way she meant to keep it: short formation on the parade ground, clear instructions, no fluff. We do 3 things, she said. We repeat what worked. We correct what didn't. We tell the truth about both. That's it. Dismissed. Units moved without the drag she'd felt 2 weeks ago. Ethan and Noah took the first gate block with a sharper handover and an updated manifest routine they wrote themselves. One driver tried to rush the line with a weak excuse about a delivery window. Noah lifted a palm and said, "We'll get you through when you're clean," and the driver waited because the gate looked like it meant business. At Training Field Echo, Reed tightened transitions so squads weren't standing idle. Warm-ups fed right into drills. Drills fed right into live iterations. The range rhythm felt like a click track. Alden walked the line and said less than she had on earlier days because shooters were correcting each other before she got there. A private who had struggled with flinch caught himself, reset his breathing, and punched a clean group. He didn't cheer. He nodded once, logged it, and set up the next string. That told Alden more than a celebration would have. The most visible change landed in the motor pool. Cross and the shop chief put bin labels in real English and real numbers, not old stencil codes that nobody remembered. They made a small, brutal rule: if you take a part, you sign and you point to the vehicle it goes into before you leave the room. Reed built a 2-step verification for high-risk items: filters, brakes, steering components, with a simple peer check that took 30 seconds and cut down on assumed done. Nobody loved the extra signature on day 1. By day 3 nobody argued, because the afternoon rollouts felt smooth and the shop didn't smell like panic. Jenkins drove the med team with the same tempo. She updated the ramp turn SOP, posted the cone position with a photo, and taped a stopwatch to the wall. They ran the carry twice a day, one slow for form and one fast for time. In the clinic, a medic who had been quiet since the crash asked for a second rep on his airway station. Jenkins gave him the kit and a nod. He cleared it clean the second time and left the room standing taller than he entered. Confidence didn't come from speeches. It came from reps. Midweek, Alden held an NCO huddle in the gym. No chairs. Just a circle on the floor. She asked 3 questions in order. What did you fix? What keeps breaking? What will you do about it without me? The answers weren't polished. They were useful. A sergeant from Barracks Alpha admitted his team had been skipping a nightly clean because it felt small. He owned it and said he'd set up a 10-minute sweep with a rotating lead so it never felt like punishment. Another NCO flagged a recurring comms battery issue. Reed stepped in and offered a swap schedule that didn't hit the same squads every week. Cross kept a running list on a battered notepad. Alden didn't dominate the talk. She set lanes and let them drive. By Friday, small signs of pride showed up where laziness used to live. A line of boots outside a bay sat heel to toe without anyone calling it out. A whiteboard near the range had a joke somebody wrote: "Green tastes better," and nobody erased it. Ethan trained a brand new gate guard and taught him the manifest trick he and Noah built, down to the exact phrasing you use when a driver tries to crowd you. "Say it steady," Ethan told him. "They'll test your voice. Keep it steady." The higher-ups noticed, too. A battalion inspector arrived unannounced and started pulling threads. He chose a Humvee at random and followed its paperwork from the bin label to the torque value to the test drive. Cross didn't posture. He handed over the tools and said, "Pick another one if you want." The inspector did. The numbers matched the metal. In the clinic, he asked Jenkins for med drill times and watched a carry turn that looked boring in the best way, no flapping straps, no jammed wheels, no confusion at the door. At the gate, he tried to slide a name past Ethan that wasn't on the list. Ethan asked for the second form and got it without a blink. The inspector gave Alden a single-line summary before he left. "You've tightened the center. Keep it tight." Late that afternoon, Alden and Cross walked the parade ground while the sun dropped behind the red hills. Cross jammed his hands in his pockets like a man who didn't quite know what to do with good news. "I used to think morale was posters and pizza," he said. "Turns out it's torque values and not getting lied to." Alden didn't laugh. She just said, "People like doing hard things well. They hate doing simple things wrong." He nodded once. "Then let them do the hard things." Reed brought a proposal for a full-scale Saturday exercise, convoy dispatch with live checkpoints, radio relays, a timed med inject, and mechanical verification at the end. Not a stunt. A run-through. Alden approved it with 2 edits: strip the fluff, keep the stress, log everything in 1 line per task. He grinned despite himself. "That's basically my love language." Saturday hit cool and clear. Unit staged by the book, then ran by the book. The gate cleared traffic without a snag. Radios stayed crisp. The convoy kept speed discipline on gravel like they'd been practicing it for months, not days. Jenkins' med team took an inject with the kind of quiet efficiency that makes adrenaline unnecessary. Cross's crew caught a loose clamp on a post-run check before it could become a problem. Reed's board told the truth while it was happening, not after. When they debriefed in the gym, Alden kept the format tight: wins first, gaps second, corrections third. She didn't hand out medals or burn anyone down. She marked a standard and pointed at it. "You did the work. Keep doing it. Don't get cute. Don't get tired. Keep telling the truth." Cross added, "And don't let the bin slip." Reed said, "And don't fight the board." Jenkins said, "And don't forget water." The room chuckled, not because it was funny, but because it felt light in a way it hadn't in a long time. That night, Fort Redstone sounded different. You could still hear weights in the gym and a socket wrench somewhere, but you could also hear nothing going wrong. Barracks Alpha lights clicked out in sequence instead of drift. The motor pool shut down clean. The clinic charted without backlog. The gate logged final traffic and closed with a latch that didn't rattle anymore because Ethan and Noah had replaced the hinge last week and then checked it twice. Alden stood by the flagpole and watched the wind push the stripes just enough to catch the last light. The base wasn't perfect. It wasn't supposed to be. It was honest about where it stood and deliberate about where it was going. That was enough to move forward, and moving forward was the whole point. Tomorrow they'd repeat it, because repetition was how pride becomes culture and culture becomes the kind of readiness you don't have to shout about, and that's exactly what they did. The next morning looked like the day before on purpose: same cadence, same boards, same checks that didn't flex for convenience. Reed posted the lineup with small edits based on Saturday's notes. Cross walked the motor pool with a coffee he didn't finish because he kept stopping to look, touch, verify. Jenkins ran the med team through 1 slow rep and 1 fast, then quietly swapped a junior lead into point so the bench stayed deep. Ethan and Noah opened the gate on time with the manifest routine they owned like a trade. Nothing dramatic. Just standards done without fanfare. By midweek, the base ran with a rhythm that didn't depend on Alden's shadow. She still walked, still checked, still asked direct questions that never lasted more than 10 seconds. But she didn't need to be everywhere for the right things to happen. NCOs started beating her to the fix. A corporal flagged a cracked lens on a range floodlight before night fire. He logged it, tagged it, and had a replacement in by 1700 without waiting for a meeting. A driver who used to push the speed on gravel radioed his own course correction when dust surged, then read the adjustment to the whole convoy like it was normal. It was. Higher headquarters set an evaluation for Thursday, unannounced on paper but obvious to anyone who had worn a uniform. Inspectors fanned out in pairs. One team pulled 3 vehicles blind and backtracked the paperwork. Another team camped at the range and watched reload, misfire, and jam clear procedures. A medical officer stood in Jenkins' doorway with his arms folded and a stopwatch. At the gate, an inspector arrived with a visitor badge that didn't belong in the stack. Ethan didn't blink. "Sir, this credential is not valid here. I can call to verify or you can head back to admin for the right one." The inspector tried a harder face. Ethan's tone didn't change. Noah backed him with the policy sheet and a pen ready to log. The inspector left the wrong badge on the desk like a calling card and moved on. In the motor pool, Cross didn't perform, he worked. He let an inspector pick the shelf and the bin and then asked him to follow the part to the vehicle and the torque value to the log. No speeches, no attitude, just straight lines that matched end to end. The inspector nodded once and wrote something that wasn't a complaint. At the clinic, Jenkins ran a trauma scenario with a calm that made the room feel bigger. The med officer tried to rattle her with a mid-scenario inject, change in vitals, altered mental status. She shifted tasks, delegated airway, reassessed, and called a transport time that landed inside the standard by a comfortable margin. He clicked the stopwatch, checked his sheet, and said nothing because there was nothing to say. Headquarters pulled everyone into the gym that afternoon. No flags, no big speeches from visitors. Just a dry summary that meant more than a plaque. The lead inspector looked at Alden and then at the room. Readiness verified. Documentation reconciled. Training tempo appropriate and effective. Safety posture improved. Maintain. That last word mattered most. It wasn't praise you frame. It was an instruction you live. After they cleared out, Alden dismissed formation and told everyone to get back to work. The gym emptied in under a minute, the way a place empties when people know what to do without being told. Cross stayed. He didn't fidget or smirk. He just stood there for a second and said, "I misread you at the start. I thought you'd come in loud and leave a mess. You came in quiet and made us honest." It stuck. Alden didn't take a bow. "We did it," she said. Then she corrected herself. "You did it. I only removed the excuses." That evening, Reed dropped a new version of the board on her desk. He trimmed redundant lines, simplified the color logic, and added a small tag that flagged tasks owned by junior leaders. He said, "They want more responsibility. They're ready." She scanned it, signed off, and told him to push it live in the morning. Outside, the wind leaned into the flag, and the bass sounded like work instead of noise. The last piece wasn't a test. It was a habit. Alden started ending each day with a 5-minute walk to all the small places that used to hide problems: the corner of the gym where plates used to stack sloppy, the barrack stairwell where a trash bag once sat all night because it was nobody's job, the back shelf in the motor pool where a misfiled part became an excuse, the clinic ramp where a wheel used to catch. Each stop had a small signature now. Plates racked by weight without a sign. Stairwell clean without a reminder. Shelf labeled by someone's handwriting you could read. Ramp turned so smooth you could run it in the dark. None of it looked like a ceremony. All of it looked like a standard. On Friday, Alden called a short assembly at sunset on the parade ground. No band, no formation longer than it needed to be. She said 3 things. First, you proved that basics win. Second, you proved that truth travels faster when nobody's afraid of it. Third, you proved you don't need me standing behind you to do it right. That's what a unit is. Cross added one line from the side like a man who had earned it. Keep the bins right and the rest will follow. People laughed because they knew exactly what he meant. Jenkins lifted a hand and said, "Drink water." Reed said, "And update the board before you sleep." Ethan yelled, "And bring the right badge," and Noah said, "Say it steady, and the line rippled with a quiet grin that had nothing to do with jokes and everything to do with relief. After dark, Fort Redstone settled into the kind of quiet that means systems are working. Radios clicked without chaos. A wrench turned once, checked, and turned again. The clinic light glowed, steady but not frantic. The gate watched the road. Barracks Alpha breathed in pattern. Alden stood by the flagpole and thought back to the first minute at the main checkpoint gate, the dust, the doubt, the feeling that everything was almost good enough. It hadn't been. Now it was better than enough because enough had a number and a signature and a habit behind it. She didn't think in speeches. She thought in steps. Keep inspections short and real. Keep training honest and repeated. Keep logs aligned with what actually happened. Keep leaders close to the work. Keep the board telling the truth even when it's ugly. Keep pride in the execution, not the talk. That was the lesson. Not a slogan. A checklist you could teach in 10 minutes and live for a career. Before she turned in, she took one more loop. She passed Reed closing his laptop with tomorrow's schedule already loaded. She passed Jenkins taping a small note over the gurney wheel, check the lock, always. She passed Cross locking the tool cage, not because he didn't trust his people, but because he trusted the standard. She passed Ethan and Noah at the edge of the lot, talking through a what-if scenario for a delivery rush they hadn't seen yet. They weren't gaming for hero moments. They were rehearsing boring steps that kept heroes unnecessary. Alden stopped at the headquarters door and looked back at the base under the desert sky. Nothing in her posture said triumphant. Everything in her posture said steady. Fort Redstone didn't need a savior. It needed a commander who would honor the basics, demand the truth, and set the pace until the unit held it on its own. That's what they built together. That's what would remain after the dust settled, after this story ended, after another convoy rolled, after another inspection came and went, after another young guard held a line because the line meant something. Readiness you don't have to shout about. A culture that doesn't bend under heat. Standards that make the next hard day just another day at work. That's the ending and the start. Tomorrow, they'd repeat it.